In 1893, the first recorded transfer in football cost £100. By 2017, a single player cost €222 million. Footballers didn't get a million times more talented, so what actually made them this expensive? A TV deal, a court ruling, a handful of billionaires, and a feedback loop nobody designed but everyone fed. The answer isn't on the pitch, it's buried in the system. In 1893, Aston Villa handed over £100 for Willie Groves. That figure, at the time, sounded almost comical, enough to spark debate in the local papers and outrage among rival clubs. But within just over a decade, the so-called unthinkable had already been outdone. In 1905, Alf Common moved for £1,000, and suddenly the transfer market had its first four-figure man. The pattern was set. Every generation, the ceiling shattered. By 1928, David Jack's £10,000 deal made headlines. In 1961, Denny Law became Britain's first £100,000 player. Each time, the logic was the same. Surely, this is the limit. Surely, footballers can't get pricier. Then came 1979. Trevor Francis joined Nottingham Forest for £1 million. The press called it madness. Brian Clough, Forest's manager, insisted the actual fee was £999,999 just to keep Francis's ego in check. But the world knew a barrier had been broken. What had started as a £100 gamble on a Scottish inside forward had become a £1 million arms race. Still, even as the numbers climbed, the rise was measured in thousands and then millions, not the dizzying sums fans would see in the decades ahead. Fast forward to 2009 and Cristiano Ronaldo's €94 million move to Real Madrid. That wasn't just a new record, it was a leap into another financial universe. The numbers stopped being relatable. The question was no longer, who's the most expensive, but how did we get here? If transfer prices had grown like the cost of bread or a pint, you'd need a small loan to buy a round at the pub. So what changed in the system? The answer isn't just about talent. It's about the hidden machinery that kept pushing the numbers higher, setting up the shockwaves that would follow. In 1992, English football's entire financial ecosystem was jolted awake. The newly formed Premier League struck a deal with Sky Sports worth £304 million, an amount so far beyond previous television contracts it seemed almost reckless. Before this, clubs scraped by on modest gate receipts and sponsorships. Suddenly, each club was guaranteed a share of a television windfall, with an average payout of £114 million spread across the league. For the first time, broadcast money dwarfed anything clubs could pull in from ticket sales. At the heart of this shift stood Rupert Murdoch, the News Corp boss, who saw live football as the ultimate lever for his pay TV ambitions. Murdoch famously described sport as the battering ram for his subscription model, a blunt force tool to smash open British living rooms for Sky's satellite dishes. In his words, sport will ram through the barriers that have held pay TV back for decades. The Premier League became his flagship product, and the clubs were more than willing partners. What did this mean in practice? Clubs could now budget with a level of certainty and ambition they'd never known. Transfer spending, once a cautious trickle, became a flood. The logic was simple. Every extra point in the table meant more TV cash next season, so why not invest in better players now? The old ceiling on transfer fees, set by what a club could scrape together from matchday income, was shattered. The Premier League's first season under Sky saw spending on new signings jump by over 150% within 3 years. This wasn't just a payday, it was a rewiring of incentives. Clubs stopped thinking like local businesses and started acting like entertainment franchises. The arms race was on, and TV money was the ammunition. The numbers felt cartoonish until they became the new normal. And as the cash kept flowing, the logic of the market shifted. If you didn't spend, you risked being left behind. The Sky deal didn't just make football richer. It made expensive transfers inevitable. Jean-Marc Bosman was a Belgian midfielder, not a superstar, but in 1995 his legal fight detonated a shockwave through football's transfer market. The European Court of Justice ruled that players could move freely at the end of their contracts. stripping clubs of their right to demand a fee once a deal ran out. On paper, it looked like the end of big spending. Why pay for what you could soon get for free? But the market had other ideas. Instead of collapsing, transfer fees for players still under contract shot up. In the 5 seasons after Bosman, the average fee for contract-bound players jumped by 35%. Clubs, suddenly terrified of losing their assets for nothing, started treating remaining contract years like gold. The logic was simple. The only way to protect value was to lock players down for longer. Average contract lengths in the top leagues stretched from 2.8 years in 1995 to 4.1 years by the end of the decade. The longer the deal, the safer the asset. If a club wanted to pry away a player with years left, it had to pay a premium, sometimes twice what the same talent would have cost before. The irony is hard to miss. A ruling meant to free players triggered an arms race in contract security. Agents and clubs became obsessed with renewal cycles, exit clauses, and risk management. The result? The transfer market became less about buying talent and more about buying time. Every negotiation turned into a high-stakes chess match, with clubs desperate to avoid the ticking clock that could turn a star into a free agent. The Bosman paradox: more freedom for players, but even higher prices for the ones you actually had to buy. Roman Abramovich stepped off his private jet in London in 2003 and, within weeks, rewrote the rules for what a football club could spend. Chelsea's transfer outlay that summer, £81 million, outstripped the budgets of entire leagues. This wasn't just a rich owner splashing out, it was a signal to every rival. The ceiling had been smashed again, and there was no going back. Suddenly, transfer fees weren't capped by TV money or matchday revenue. They were limited only by the ambition and wealth of whoever owned the club. The Premier League had already been supercharged by broadcast deals, but billionaire owners changed the game's entire metabolism. Abramovich's arrival turned Chelsea into a financial juggernaut overnight. That first summer saw the likes of Hernan Crespo, Claude Makelele, and Damien Duff arrive for sums that, just a year earlier, would have sounded like typos. By the time Sheikh Mansour bought Manchester City in 2008, the playbook was clear: spend big, spend fast, and force everyone else to catch up. City's first transfer window under Abu Dhabi ownership saw £210 million flow out the door. Not to be outdone, Paris Saint-Germain's Qatari backers injected over €200 million into signings in 2012, setting a new pace for the continent. What did this arms race actually achieve? The numbers became routine. Where the world once gasped at a £30 million transfer, now £50 million was the going rate for a promising defender or a winger with Champions League experience. The idea of a €100 million transfer stopped being a headline and started to look like the price of entry for clubs with serious ambitions. Every time a billionaire arrived, the market recalibrated. Clubs that couldn't keep up risked irrelevance. The transfer market had become an auction, and the only limit was how deep a new owner's pockets ran. This wasn't just inflation, it was a structural shift. The next domino, waiting in the wings, was the rise of agents who saw these mega deals as their own gold rush. Jorge Mendes didn't just negotiate contracts, he rewrote the rules of football's hidden economy. The numbers are staggering. In 2025 alone, clubs worldwide paid out $1.37 billion in agent fees, a sum that rivals the GDP of a small nation. For every blockbuster transfer, there's a commission chain humming in the background, 5 to 10% of a player's salary, sometimes 3 to 5% of the transfer fee itself. Mendes, whose Gestafeud empire has brokered over €1 billion in deals, routinely pockets multi-million payouts. The Paul Pogba move to Manchester United, for example, generated a £4 million commission. These aren't just bonuses, they're built-in incentives that quietly push transfer prices higher, deal after deal. The more a player costs, the more everyone in the chain gets paid. In a market designed to reward escalation, agents have become the accelerators, adding a hidden surcharge to every headline fee. Today's transfer market runs on a loop that feeds itself. The Premier League's rights deal for 2025 clocks in at £4.46 billion a season, a figure that would have sounded like science fiction even a decade ago. Every blockbuster signing brings a spike in global viewership, which lets the league's commercial board squeeze even more from broadcasters' next cycle. That fresh pile of cash doesn't just line pockets, it gets recycled into the next round of £100 million signings, pushing the ceiling ever higher. The elasticity between TV money and transfer spend sits at 0.8. For every 10% rise in rights income, transfer budgets leap 8%. That's why a €222 million Neymar deal no longer seems like a one-off. By 2025, a list of routine £80 to £100 million moves reads like an auction catalog. If a pint of beer had followed the same inflation curve, a round at the pub would set you back £50. In this world, mega deals aren't outliers. They're the logical endpoint of a system built to chase its own tail. Today, transfer fees outpace almost every other economic metric in sport. As TV deals and billionaire owners keep raising the stakes, the game's market logic shows no signs of slowing. The real question, how much is too much before the bubble bursts? Drop your thoughts in the comments.